This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. This is Joe Marion, Cloud Communications Alliance. First of all, welcome and happy holidays to everybody. This is our last chance to touch a lot of you before the holidays start. I want to thank you all for hanging in with us this year. It's been a long year. It's been a trying year, but hopefully there's some light, at the end of the tunnel. I want to also welcome you to our second in our trilogy of conferences, webinars, that is, focused on the EU. Um, what a lot of the CCA does is global, but there also are regional differences. And this year, I'm proud to say the CCA is focused more on EU events than we ever have before. We enhanced our regulatory guidebooks to include additional European countries. And a lot of that has to do with the push that your board members have given us. Laurent Silvestri, Ian Sinnott, and Matt Townend are three of our European board members. They've been pushing for more and more deliverables for our European members. So, guys, I want to thank you for doing that. It's a pleasure. When we planned today's webinar, we were looking for someone to speak about the channel in Europe. And candidly, because this is a European webinar, we're looking for a European. But what we also wanted was the best person on the planet to deliver it. And what we found out, unfortunately, is that the best person on the planet was an American. That's the bad news. The good news is that Janet Sheens does have a European connection. And Janet, maybe I'll let you kind of explain that as I turn it over to you.
You got it. And do you want to go through any of this stuff?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, guys, you already know this. You can mute yourselves. You can turn on your webcam. You can chat. Make sure to click on the chat, though. If you have any questions, chat them to me, and then I'll pass them on to Janet. That's it, Janet.
Perfect. So hi, everybody. Janet Shines, CEO and founder of the JS Group, and we're going to talk about the role of the European channel. And I am I guess you'll call it a world citizen. Lived all over, and I'm actually married to a European, so I guess I have some street cred there. So we spend a lot of time back and forth. I mentioned that I'm the founder and CEO of JS Group. We're a channel consulting firm. We work a lot in the communications space, consulting for firms, everything from Avaya and 8x8 Zoom to others. We spend most of our time, obviously, in the channel. I was the channel chief at Verizon globally, Motorola Enterprise Solutions, and Symbol globally as well. And so, I pride myself on taking a global view, but understanding that things are local. And also understanding that things are changing very rapidly in the European marketplace over the last few years, right? Some of the not just the pandemic, but also what the U.S. affectionately calls Brexit, and all of the changes that have happened. But the biggest change I think that happened in our industry, and let's face it, we all prospered from it, was the pandemic actually brought unified communications, particularly, as well as contact center, et cetera, into the limelight, and took what would have taken 5 to 7 years of migration and had it happen virtually overnight in a single year. And much of that was done through or with a channel partner. And the statistics globally, and some markets, of course, moving a little more slowly than others, but that more transformation happened in the first 90 days of the pandemic than in the past 3+ years. And now we've all almost become very, very used to this format that we're in today, at our desks, in our comfortable pants, having conversations and meetings, etc. In fact, it was really interesting. I was on a call the other day, and it was a conference dial-in bridge, and I really didn't almost know what to do when there wasn't video. And so I think we truly have transformed, and all of us were part of that transformation. But the world, is still only partially open, and we're seeing, and a lot of family in the Netherlands, a lot of friends that lived in Richmond Park and in other areas, and just hearing from friends, family, and clients around the world, and particularly in Europe right now, there's so much around closures, right? And unrest from those closures and vaccine rules, mandates, whatever we want to call them, in varying degrees, right, of how countries, particularly in the European market, are managing, right? You can go from, Merkel saying, we're in the transition to the new leadership, we're going to go full vaccine mandate, to Boris saying, hey, I'm not so sure. But what we're seeing and hearing here in the US as well as in Europe is a lot of uncertainty in the world. Again, we're kind of peaking out, some events starting to happen, some things starting to happen, but primarily everybody is still only partially open. And there's a saying that you can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I do think that now, post-pandemic, particularly for the channel, we're never going to go back to long commutes and meeting in offices, or certainly not the same office cadence that we used to have. And now we're hybrid, right? And again, depending on your locale, depending on your country, these things vary, but the world is really still only partially opened. And as a result of that, we've got almost, if you will, this channel perfect storm happening. Now, look, before the pandemic and pandemic part 2 and now part 3 with Omicron, we knew that things were already changing in the channel. That pandemic just sped it up. So you think about what's been happening in the channel, and again, varies a little bit country to country, but in the more mature markets, you've got an aging owner demographic. In the communications channel particularly, we've got partner owners that are of a certain age, where wrinkles and gray hair abound, and not necessarily clear on their transition plan. So we've seen mergers, we've seen purchases, we've seen outright retirements. But we're also seeing, the passover, the baton going in the leadership team to the next generation. We're fast approaching, from a global workforce standpoint, the millennials and Gen Zs being 75% plus of the workforce, right? So this is not different in the channel. The channel aged in place and now, kind of sped up some retirements and some mergers and some acquisitions. So we've got this, partner owner kind of turnover. We've got some changing models and how things are distributed. We're starting to see the rise up of the marketplace. We're seeing more and more MSPs come into the space, come into the cloud communication space, a space they weren't necessarily in a few years ago. It was primarily the work of an agent or, a VAR, depending on what market you were in. And then we're also, finally seeing a changing customer preference. The pandemic was good for one thing. It forced us all to think about our digital properties and get good, exquisitely good, at allowing transactions from learning all the way to buying online. And so this kind of channel perfect storm of a changeover in the partners, a changeover in the type of partners, and then digitization happening in the sales and marketing arena for most of the partners is really creating what, again, I like to think of as this channel perfect storm. And so today I want to spend a little time sharing with you what I think is happening in the channel, what we see specific to the European market, and talk about which partners can thrive in what is a challenging environment. And a lot of it depends on their resilience and the jobs that need to be done by the channel. I'm going to tell a little story here from my past, which is I hope can define this jobs to be done in a more consumer manner, and then we can think about and realize the implications in the channel. So one of the things about the channel is we hired them many years ago to do a job. And the job that we hired them, either through commission or through discount, because margin is its own reward, depending on whether you were reselling or selling, the job we hired them to do was sell and market. Sell and market the solutions. And then over time, the job we hired them to do was service, right? We started to say, hey, the partners need to do service. Somewhere along the way, a group of partners splintered off and said, we're actually going to be the outsourced IT, if you will, for our customers. And we're going to be the kind of name brand that the customers see, and we'll drag all your stuff behind us. But our services are going to lead the way. Our IT support, our help desk, our ability to manage their licenses, manage their users, And so as that happened, we had a lot of these jobs that needed to be done by the channel kind of changing. And so the partners that are thriving now is changing as well. And so what I like to say is we're kind of in the next normal, where the role of the channel is going to change dramatically. Now, look, when we say channel, so many people think channel. I know what channel is, but there are now so many types of partners. We've got our traditional partners. You've got your resale VARs. You've got your MSPs. You've got your referral partners. You've got your agents. These, these typical kind of partners. And by the way, if you, I pulled this from Jay McBain's Forrester report and tried to pull out the numbers that were specific to eliminate the US and APAC. But in any given day, these numbers could expand or retract. I mean, Microsoft is adding 6,000 or 7,000 partners a week globally. So, we're seeing a lot of change here, but that traditional space, right, started with these value-added resellers or iron workers, as we used to call them, whatever they sold, right? They used to sell PBX systems. Then they scrunched themselves down in a smaller group of MSPs, managed service providers. And then if you start to look at, for example, the security conversion that's happening, cybersecurity across the world, you've got this even smaller group of MSSPs. But you've also got some other tech channels. You've got your telco agents and sub agents. You've got print and copy, pro AV, you've got retail POS, but guess what? You've also got a whole bunch of other channels. We now have influencers, alliances, advocates, affinities, etc. Social, digital channels that are being paid a percentage of the sale or a referral fee, or many times nothing, but are a major influencer. We also see our shadow channels. We see accounting and CPA firms, CPA being a US term, being 150,000 of them out there saying, hey, we offer technology consulting. The same with digital agencies. During the pandemic, if you needed a website as a business, you went to a company that did that, a digital agency. They updated your website, they managed your email marketing and your search engine marketing. And now all of a sudden they're starting to sell things. They're selling Office 365, they're selling other things. And by the way, this is a way where Microsoft potentially could take back over with Teams, because these folks are very, very focused, right, on their environment and what helps their environment succeed. And so, they're coming at it from a different way. We also see solution integrators, software as a service, emerging technology startups, particularly in areas like IoT, just coming around. And so we're seeing all these emerging channels come to the market. And so now when we think channel, it really has changed. And who's going to win in the communication industry, I think it's very much dependent on segment by segment, need by need, market by market. What will the channel really bring? Bottom line, it's a brand new race. I'm a big Formula One fan, and I truly think that Max Verstappen was robbed. I'm sorry for anybody who's a Lewis Hamilton fan this past weekend, but we can talk about that offline. And the road has really changed for the race, and much like a Formula One car has rules for the year, right? The rules change every year. The channel has informal rules, and the rules change, and by a little tweak, right, in the channel's engine, things can go completely differently for a different model. And so what I want to kind of talk about this morning is what's happening out there. I'm going to talk about some of those trends. You may see some of them, you may not see others. Hopefully you'll learn a few things. I'm going to talk about what it means and what we should all do. So the first trend I'm going to talk to is the talent wars. Everyone around the globe is struggling to find talent. We just completed our quarterly channel survey. I did pull out only specific to folks that responded in the European market. 63% of those partners stated that there were talent gaps as a top 3 growth inhibitor. Some of the talent gaps they talked to was having enough services personnel, sales, particularly people being able to make digital sales, and then marketing. A lot of talk about the gap in marketing, right? They can neither afford nor find good marketing talent. And 31% of those very same partners were looking to their vendor, their supplier, to offer some kind of training program, support, help to help them train up the workforces. And there were some verbatims around, why aren't the vendors, suppliers, carriers, etc., doing more to help train up the workforces, particularly in marketing where they should be strong, right? Why don't they have more benefits to that? So something to consider as we move into the next year. And I talked about this a little bit in some of the roles that they're looking for, but the needed skills are changing. And it's interesting. People have kind of went in the channel from a sales partner or a services partner to more of an orchestrator. So there are pieces of the puzzles that they're all bringing in, the channel partners, they're knitting together. Some they may sell, some they may not. And they've become just more of an orchestrator. We heard that term a year or two ago. Our Formula One car, to stick with my analogy, right, had an engine that was aggregator. The channel was an aggregator. A year before that, they were solution providers. A year before that, right, so every year we seem to have a little bit of a change. The change coming up into 2022 is the channel is more of an orchestrator. So we're seeing more and more non-transacting partners that may be transacting something on their own. Let's use a digital agency as an example, who is doing outbound marketing, inbound marketing, e-com, etc. And having a call center or unified communication functionality is super important to them because their campaigns rely on people being able to contact, but they're not necessarily the person who's selling that. They're partnering with a vendor or partnering with a partner on that. And so we're seeing more and more of this orchestrator role in the channel. And this changes the skills that are needed. I talked a little bit about some of the skill gaps the partners are talking about. Digital marketing seems to be on everybody's top of the list. I think the last 2 years have taught us that if you can't go digital, you might have to stay home, literally. And so folks are really worried about and trying to figure out, right, how do they really advance their skills there. We're also seeing, advanced solutions. What's coming next? What's coming down the pike? How do I reply, respond, manage that? And how do I then provide those advanced services that clients might need? And so I think for all of us, we have to think about how do you help the channel, right, with those skill gaps. The second trend we're seeing is a go-to-market shift. And this go-to-market shift is leaving some of the current top partners and the favorite vendors behind the curve, because this go-to-market shift is very quickly went to digital, to communities, to influence, to social. And then most importantly, it's went to a different sales model, right? Go back a few years, everything was project-based. Move forward to now, everything is recurrent as a service, recurrent revenue based, as we're entering here our next normal. And so that go-to-market shift is really almost like lightning is striking in the channel. And what I find interesting, that's a good question, Leanne. So how well trained and equipped are the sales teams in the channel? I would say that the sales skills in the channel are at an all-time low. Relationships, hugs and mugs, as we sometimes like to say in the channel, have been for a long time. Existing relationships the partner may have come from the company they're selling to in the enterprise space, or they're locally embedded if they're selling in the SMB space, and their skills are very dated. They do not know how to practice social selling. They're not good at social media. They've failed to realize the next generation of business owners, business decision makers, that's their community. They are behind on even Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, whatever platform of your choice. Insert the ones that all of you sell and great ones, all of them. They're very bad at doing proposals in those environments. They're not great at presenting. They don't even know how to make their camera and their sound okay. And so I think not good. And I think that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for the vendors, suppliers who lean in there and say, hey, we're going to help you enhance your skills. We did a program last year at JS Group for a couple of vendors, a social selling program, and retrained partners, sellers. And the folks we retrained, not only did we have a massive funnel and massive closes from that, but they are outperforming their non-trained peers by about 3x. So investing in programs that allow people to learn digital sales skills It's really interesting. And it's interesting, Joe, I'm glad you asked that, is the current generation afraid to use the phone? So phoning for business is still something, you know, at one level or another, someday you have to talk to someone, even though most people of a certain generation think you can just text them, that this is not a phone. They're not familiar with the voice element of it. And you know, what's interesting to me is the current cold calling success rate is less than 1/10 of 1%. It is the least successful it's ever been, and we know why. People aren't in the office; it's harder to get in touch with them, right? Everybody's in back-to-back Zoom calls. However, when you cold call and you've already connected with someone on social media, and by connected, I don't mean you sent them an invite and then you immediately spam called them, but that you connected with them, that you shared content with them, that you created a relationship with them. We have a process we use in our training, you know, 45 days. The success rate of cold calling those clients goes to almost 30%. And so I think as we think about what makes good sellers, the key to understanding is what the partners will succeed on in the future. And so we really need to invest in areas where the business is going, and also look through our inactive partners, because at any given time 80% of the vendors' partners are inactive, to figure out who is successful today but who might very well be successful tomorrow. And many of us don't do a good job at that, right? Looking at our base of partners and really honing through and culling out the ones that are never going to succeed, but also making sure we don't fall in love with partners who will not succeed in the future. And so one of the ways to do that is change what your metrics for good are. You think about old-fashioned kind of rear view metrics in most programs. Rear view metrics like how many certifications did they take, or revenue, or brick and mortar stats, how many salespeople do they have, how many locations do they have. Traditional sales methods, right? Oh, how many cold calls did they make? How many meetings did they have? And deal registration. They register something after they get it. These are all rear view mirror metrics. But if you think about forward looking, right? You're in the windshield, you drive a Formula One car, you know, face forward, right? You don't look behind you very often. When you're going fast, and fast is quite frankly the new big, and you're trying to change things, you look forward. And so things like solution competency, right, has nothing to do with the certification on your solution. It has to do with what is their solution competency, what are they good at, their customer experience worth, their website value. How much is their website worth? If their website is worth less than 50,000 euros, or you know, whatever your personal choice is on pounds, etc. And it's not trending up in value, this is a partner at risk. 88% of sales now start with somebody discovering online. So if your website isn't of a certain value, and of that value because you show up in search, and not gaining in value, your chances of succeeding are rapidly narrowing. Now look, in some of the less mature countries, you probably have 5 years for this to happen. And in more mature countries, you probably have a year. So it really, you know, it depends, and we have to look at that. Also, what I just talked about, social selling. Are they on LinkedIn? Do they have the appropriate connections? Are they connected with their customers and prospects, etc.? And how many brand impressions are they really making, right? Our metrics for what is good is changing very rapidly. Some other metrics we see people considering that are working very well is, you know, what percentage of sales were partner initiated? What percentage recurrent revenue? How's their search engine optimization performance? Do they perform well in their local market? And I'll talk more about that in a second. Their competitive competency, their geo penetration, their vertical penetration, and of course, what other vendors they might sell. Now that allows us to double click on a trend, which is digital normal. Through the end of 2022, I mentioned, you know, 80% of people start first. McKinsey's study global recently said more than 56% of B2B buyers now prefer digital and remote engagement, prefer it. So they don't want you to come in their office. They don't want to see you at an event. They prefer a remote engagement. And we know remote work's remaining in place for close to 50% of firms, which leads to less face-to-face and more digital. And again, I think the channel is very behind. So we have to ask ourselves, do we know our bottom line for demand? Partners that can capture, measure, and this is key, measure. That's where I love digital, because it allows you to instantaneously measure what's happening and react to what's working. And focus in on digital with a return on investment focus, unlike past events we may have funded or other things we may have funded. Digital allows us to immediately see return on investment. We spent money, did it work, did it not work? And the partners that can capture, measure, and react to that are going to grow. And that's everything from how they're doing their content to what they're doing in mobile and search engine, how they're using social media. It's really critically important. And in fact, when we've looked at growth in the channel, 68% of top growth partners are focused on increased digital demand. They're doing rich content, videos, interviews, articles. They're working on their localized SEO, micro content. If they're in multiple countries, they have multiple sites, right? The days of having a brochure site are long gone, and they're really making sure they're search engine optimized in their local environment. They're also looking for digitized lead management, from as simple as email intent-based marketing campaigns. And what I mean by that is if someone searches for a solution that is similar to yours, you see that, you follow the person, and then you email the person to say, hey, we noticed you looking at this. If you've ever been on Facebook and saw an ad pop up for sneakers after you search for sneakers, you've experienced this on a consumer level. On a B2B level, it's a little more exquisite than that, and a little more nuanced. But we're seeing a lot of digitized lead management happening in the top growth partners, and that's changing their new hire qualifications too, because they're saying, hey, if all of our leads are going to come in line, come in from online, how does this change how we think about things? We're also seeing, and I talked about it already, upskilling their sales teams for social selling, so that I know how to give a remote presentation. I know how to work LinkedIn or the platform of your choice, depending on your local market. And then industry influencers. We're also seeing influence, even paid influence, starting to have a real impact. There's a top 50 influencer in every industry. I'm supposedly a top influencer in the channel. There's a top influencer in healthcare. There's a top influencer in government, in every market. And so when you really look at those influencers, there's a lot coming out now with people spending money with those influencers or having them to podcasts, webinars, etc., as a way to drive more business. And this is really just the beginning of that journey. So think about it, marketplaces. We've all started talking about marketplaces, Amazon being, the most prevalent early runner. They're going to disrupt the market. And the analysts are saying, look, there'll be 30% or more of sales by 2027 in the US, 2029 in the mature European markets, probably later than that in some of the less mature markets. But the reality is we're going to see about a third direct sales, a third channel, a third marketplaces as we move forward. And those marketplaces are going to be like snowflakes. It's not going to be where you can just be on one of them. There's going to be multiple marketplaces. And the partners that are starting to come along in that journey, either use marketplaces or have their own, are going to succeed. And let's face it, some of what we sell can certainly be purchased in a click-to-run kind of environment. The distributors, from TD SYNNEX to Ingram to others, are investing heavily in these marketplaces and license management. We've seen new distributors come to market with new functionality here. So we're really seeing a lot here around the digitization of the channel. So now I'm going to triple click into the rapidly rising influence. So there's a shift that's happening to influencing the influencer. So think about when in traditional sales, a channel partner would go to a customer and there was the decision maker and then there was the influencers, right? So maybe the decision maker was the CIO, but the CMO had a lot of influence because they were running campaigns and wanted to make sure that the cloud communication platform had the right functionality, and the CFO was an influencer because he had to find budget, so on and so forth. Well, now a lot of channel firms, the top growth ones, are shifting to influencing those influencers, including the purchaser, at scale. The key to winning, though, for you in the channel is understanding for your own influence in the influencer. So the channel leaders, the partner owners, the partner sales managers, the partner sales people, partner services people, is understanding who those channel partners listen to. Where do they go for their information? Where do they get their information? Influence is the new currency in the channel. And as channel leaders, any one of us, avoid it at your own peril. Increasing your brand, your exposure, particularly on social media, but also in virtual events like this one, speaking, being engaged, etc., is critical. At JS Group, we actually offer an outsource, what we call influencer hero program. We write content for the channel leader. We engage as them online, couple languages, not all the languages. And what's interesting is what we see happen. So as you are thoughtful and prescriptive, and we have a PhD that runs our social programs, and so she's constantly studying the algorithms and what works and how it works. And many people have failed at social media, as an example, and influence, because they thought it was a broadcast channel and they should just talk about their solutions and the partners would listen. That is not the case. You have to be interesting. I'm not asking you to be political, I'm asking you to be interesting. You have to be interesting in someone would engage with, and that takes a lot of work. But that, just like marketing or sales incentives, can all be outsourced. And so that's one of the things, when you look closely at it, this influence is really important, both in social, but also in sales. So when you look very closely, globally, you see 64% of sales made via a channel, but 91% of deals include a channel partner. So the channel partner may not necessarily be selling the solution, but at some level they're there for services, integration, or another solution. And so the channel becomes really the tip of the spear in the majority of all deals. And so when you consider these trends, that pyramid program that we all invested in, gold, silver, bronze, platinum, whatever, premier, kind of things, that pyramid program won't hold up very long in this environment. Think about what I've talked about, right? The metrics have changed, the partners are changing, how we go to market is changing. Many partners not transacting your solution sale, being an influencer in your solution sale, more and more referral partners coming in, more and more marketplaces where a partner may have done the heavy lift of designing the solution, but the customer actually buys on a marketplace. In that world, a pyramid program built on certifications and revenue is horribly dated approach to engage with the channel. And so, as we think about that pyramid program being kind of dated and influence being an online game, and this millennial shift that we're seeing, and Gen Z, bringing different influence flashpoints, if you will, like social media versus face-to-face, think about how some of the metrics even in a standard program would change. Is revenue really important, or is it important that Roy has 1 million followers and has a success rate of engaging followers in an online learning session, let's say, in the thousands plus? Is that partner more important to your program than the partner who last week sold 2 deals? Because today, the partner that sold 2 deals is more important, but tomorrow, the partner that has that level of influence and gets people in the top of the funnel may indeed be more important. And most of our programs were not built that way. Those partners were thought of as a marketing, right? That's a marketing engagement, top of the funnel. The channel was really the middle of the funnel and down to the close, right? Deal registration to close. And so it really does change how we think about things. The next trend I want to spend a couple minutes on is hyper customization. So we've seen customer expectations really evolve. So they're really focused now on what the channel partner is bringing to the market. The channel partner is bringing bespoke services, support, etc., and really helping, really helping, the customer figure out this digitization. But what we're seeing is this is a real push on partner profitability. Partner profitability is actually declining. Sales have went up, revenues went up. Most partners are pretty bullish on top line sales, but their profit is going down. The cost of talent is higher, tools are higher, they're spending more for things, they're spending more if they are generating demand, they're spending more for demand. The market realities are pushing higher costs and lower margins on things. And then the partner's ability, right, many times is not as good as it needs to be for the task at hand. And the farther they are outside the acceptable level, the more unprofitable they become. Profitable partners can meet and find customer demand, they can handle the market realities, and they have the ability to define. If they don't, right, they see these talent wars, right, tough market, and we don't have enough talent. They see not enough customer demand and an inability to go after new customers. They lose money, or they lose clients. And supply chain issues are continuing to create a divide as well. And we're also seeing a trend in the channel where the channel is selling more services dollars versus products sold. The ecosystem is gaining power. And not all of it is transactional around our solutions. And so, to double nail that home, non-transacting partners may now be more valuable than the existing channel. So the bottom line is the road ahead is paved with new ideal partners that we have to find, locate, and engage. Non-transacting partners that we have to understand how to manage influence, referral, and folks that are selling services that may have nothing to do with our solution but are an influence. We've got our changes in customer partner preferences. Who are they talking to? They're talking potentially to an e-com or digital agency about their communication needs, not a traditional speeds and feeds partner. And then we're seeing channel partner strength vary in specific markets, particularly in light of all the shutdowns, et cetera. It's been a tough couple of years. And so really what we're starting to see is we always talked about that channel ecosystem, right? Ooh, the ecosystem, distribution, partners, the vendor. We're almost seeing now a channel megacosm. And many of the analysts are saying, look, there could be 6 or 7 partners in a given deal. So this channel megacosm, if you will, is really coming to light as it won't be as straight line as, hey, you've got a pyramid, slot your folks in 3 levels, give them your standard product certification, some spiffs, some incentives, and a couple pieces of marketing, and they'll be good to go. And an enterprise, of course, co-sell with them. This couldn't be further from the truth in our next normal. In our next normal, it's going to be a variety of partners with different skills and different understandings that really pave the way. And so in all of this, affording growth for the partners that are growing can be very financially challenging. Let's not forget that they went from project-based, where they got an inflow of cash, to recurrent revenue in many instances. Many partners now over 50% recurrent revenue, and that 15 a month is not the same as that 100,000 right at the start. And so they've had to make some accommodations for that. And so 77% of partners state they're limiting growth due to cash flow. So they don't have enough cash flow to continue to grow. In fact, during the pandemic, 32% of partners said that they didn't market at all for new customers because they were so focused on servicing what they had. So that's a lot of change. So as we're wrapping up, what do you prioritize so it doesn't blow up in your face? The first thing I would say is start by taking a step back. We use our market action process here at JS Group to reset the plan for the vendors, for the partners, for the ecosystem. Don't start with your existing program and say, what should I change? Fresh sheet of paper, look at what's really happening, and determine what your 3-year plan is to change your approach. Second, invest in automation tools that work. And by the way, total myth, if you automate with PRM, partner relationship management, it'll help the channel. The reality is a lot of partner relationship management systems don't have a positive ROI, and they result in an inferior experience. So first, map your processes, understand your processes, and automate the smallest thing for the biggest impact first. I'm going to repeat that. Automate the smallest thing for the biggest impact first. Don't try to automate everything in one go. And that automation should take things off the channel's plate, make it faster, easier to deal with you. That will have all the business in the world. Next, help partners with talent. offer better education in your program. Those educations can free up resources for the partners to have to learn things or understand things. Move beyond your product. Use some of the people within your company to help. I love what Amazon has done in the space. Amazon actually has a competency checklist, and you get on with the person who has the, said competency, and they take you through the checklist to see if you actually have the competencies. So they've kind of turned certification upside down, and I think it's a good lesson. I think we could all learn from that. But also, consider how you help partners with digital marketing skills, with services skills. How do you offer education versus certification to your partners? And then, think about that traditional, pyramid you have, and consider piloting or adding a points program to encompass some new behaviors and partner types. You don't need a whole reset of your pyramid program for existing productive partners. But for example, and I'll look at what Intel has done. Intel has went out on behalf of each of their products, and they have a points program for influencers. And you can qualify as an influencer, and you do certain activities, and you earn points, and those points are redeemable for dollars or prizes or benefits, depending on the country and the local regulations and laws. And they're allowing partners to earn points for value. And they're using that data of where a partner's engaging to drive the right program moves in their future program. Things like specializations, more leads coming from people that are digital, well, then maybe that needs to be part of our program requirements. Brand awareness, right? People that are able to drive brand awareness and preference. And marketing prowess has become a big deal. Marketing partners who go online, and I'll use an example. There are firms that will go online every day. They're going to write content. They're going to write blogs. They're going to write things that'll bring eyeballs to their site and convert leads for, let's use the lowest level, unified communication. Those partners, traditionally, we thought of as marketing partners, and they weren't in the channel. They were in marketing. Marketing outsourced that stuff to get leads. That's very antiquated thinking. We have to think about a track for those partners in our program, whether it's a points program or changing our whole program. And if you have to continue to value revenue, which sounds silly because you're saying, well, why wouldn't I value revenue? Because it's a rear view metric. It's great, you made your quota, but it really has no indication of future success. You want to assign a higher multiple to strategic or retention revenue. You really want to focus in your program, particularly now after we had such a massive uptake of cloud comms in the last 2 years. We want to focus on retention. Right? What are we doing for retention? What programs are we driving for retention? How are we rewarding partners for retention? And quite frankly, how are we affording that? And then finally, no bull, my favorite slide, by the way. Marketing matters. We need to make innovations in marketing to improve ROI. We can't just keep funding partners' events, partner, incentives, partner swag, as it's known. We can't do that. We need to invest in other things. One thing we can invest in is automation and streamlining. It's a marketing innovation to streamline how people get content, how people get leads, how people get marketing campaigns. And in every industry, I don't care what industry you go after, the customer, the end customer's needs have changed. And so we need to make the right marketing moves to win and retain business, because those things have evolved. So you have to question your MDF spends, your co-op spends. What are you spending it on? What are your ROI targets? We're seeing a lot of vendors come out with MDF packages where instead of saying, hey, submit your marketing development funds and we'll approve it, they're coming out and saying, no, we have 3 packages this quarter. And the one package is, lead gen appointment setting. The other package is social selling, and the third package is something else. These are the 3 packages, and the ROI targets are thus. And they're being very successful at that because they've predefined MDF packages that have a specific return on investment target that they can easily measure. And so flipping that on the head, understanding that partners do not necessarily have the right sales and marketing skills right now, and putting together demand generation kits, programs, MDF that helps, critical. You also want to invest in localized search engine optimization. 83% of partners not optimized for local search, despite 68% of them being local in their nature. 87% of them have a domain authority of less than 50 on a scale of 1 to 100. That's how well your site is. Health metrics, does it show up in search, does it have broken links, etc. And under 5% of the partners we looked at were in the top 3 results for the very keywords that they mentioned most often on their website. So contact center, unified communication, networking, whatever it might be, they actually were not in their local market, despite the fact, by the way, that Google gives a lot of preference for locality. They were not in those top keywords because they had not search engine optimized their website. And so focusing this next year on marketing, we'll show you even more about which partners can actually give you some money and focus on your business. And finally, focus on the money. Make co-op and MDF easier and faster. I talked about those packages. Help ease those cash flow issues that are holding back partner growth. Consider credit programs. Consider early payment commission programs. We've seen some success in paying that MRC upfront. Do things to help these partners bridge the gap. The bottom line is the path forward requires a lot of tough conversations about the journey and the destination. So I'm going to open up for Q&A, but I just wanted to say thank you. And my contact information is here. I am located in the US, so if you text or call me, that is my cell phone number. You'll need to add the appropriate international digits to it. And remember that I'm on the East Coast of the US, so, text it appropriately. You can also find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and of course on Facebook. So with
Janet,
that, we're open for questions.
Sorry, I thought you paused there, Janet. Fabulous and informative. I have a couple questions that were texted to me and a couple that I have, but can an influencer be an individual or can it be a company? Can ABC company be considered an influencer? I think of influencers as these guys on Twitter and LinkedIn who are espousing things, but can it be a company?
It can be. Yeah, it can be a person or a company. And many times a company might, influence the purchase of your solution, and so that's good. And partnering with those companies that could influence your decision is a great rock star move.
Okay. Ian, go ahead. You unmuted yourself. I have a couple more.
Yeah, I was just I was interested in the cash flow thing because I think that's crosses over with the sales question that I asked before. Is how do partners move on with the right investment in the right salespeople, and if it's all revenue incoming, then it's hard to pay back the early costs of a salesperson. So I kind of just am left reflecting on that bit about advance payment of recurring revenues as a way of cash advancing them, if you like, and getting the car moving. So I think that was an interesting place. And I was just going to say how important you feel the YouTube asset will be for a business. Is this a stock of information that carries a more weight than the old written word, if you like?
It does. I love the YouTube. I'll start there and go back to the cash flow. So I'm a big fan of YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. What we find is people search YouTube because it comes up so high in search for insight, instruction, etc. And so if you can make good videos, if the partners can make good videos and post them on specific, let's say, how to use the features. We have one in the US, the guy's done a whole series on how to use the advanced features in Zoom. And he has a lot of viewers, and as you can imagine, he then also gets a lot of people calling him to say, I need to buy licenses. So I think it's very important. And on the cash flow, yeah, we're seeing good success with understanding there's cash flow issues and finding ways, whether it's accepting credit, whether it's prepaying commission, whether it's incentives or investment programs. We are seeing a lot of that, and we're also, of course, seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions because of it. Because the VC and PE firms have a lot of money, and they're just buying up these companies that are going to have recurrent residual revenue because they have the money to live through it.
Thanks.
No worries. Thank you.
You mentioned that the channel, there was some kind of number you referenced where the channel, was not focusing on looking for new customers, but servicing old customers. Do you think the repetitive revenue model is to blame, and they get a little bit fat, dumb, and happy?
Well, I think two things happened. So to use a US term, the channel became unwittingly and unwillingly, in many cases, an essential worker during the pandemic. And so they, in my mind, it's like anything else. I put a little weight on during the pandemic because I didn't exercise as much, and the channel added their own version of weight, which is they didn't market as much because they didn't have to. All of a sudden, overnight, people needed the technology that they had been trying to push for years. And so they lost the muscle, and they were so short-staffed that all they could do was respond to their existing customers' problems with remote work. And so I really do think that's a future trend that'll hurt them. And more than 30% of the partners not marketing at all for new customers. That's a scary statistic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, one more question. Somebody texted to me. Is an influencer independent from the solution provider, or can the influencer be an employee of the solution provider? So, is it an outside person, or can it be an inside person?
It can be both. So when we do our social selling program, I'll use that as the example. We endeavor to turn a seller or sales leader in the partner into the influencer. So we do that through consistently posting content, connecting them with influencers in the industry, engaging with influencers so that their score goes up. And over time, they begin to show first whenever any customer or prospect comes onto the social media platform of choice, and they become the influencer. And because of that, they outperform their peers 3-4x. We've seen as high as 7x on demand generation. Those are the best kind of influencers because you're already paying them a salary. If they do the right things, they'll make more commission and everybody's happy. But there's also paid influencers. And we've used a lot of those in verticals to, if a partner was, for example, trying to break into healthcare, break into finance, they would use one of those influencers for a period of time to get their company brand out there, convert people, and then use their own internal influencers to continue that engagement.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Anybody else? Any questions? Going once. Great. Well, Janet, thank you. We have recorded today's session. We will make it available to anybody who registered for today's event. We'll be sending that out later today. But Janet, I want to take this opportunity to wish you a happy and a healthy holiday and a new year. And let's hope that 2022 is kind of profitable and successful and to get healthy for everybody.
Yes, yes, from your lips. Thank you, everybody, for your time and a wonderful and prosperous and healthy season.
Great.
Great event. Thanks, Janet. Enjoyed it very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for being part of the European conversation, everybody.